Okay. Hello, listeners. John Ciaccio. I'm your host for the Private Eye Nightline. As you can tell, we are now broadcasting live Wednesday nights, 5 o'clock Pacific Time, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. We have Debbie O'Hara in the studio here from Accredited Investigations. I want to thank Debbie for joining us. Hi, Debbie.
Hi, John.
Okay, look, we got a great show lined up, don't we?
Yes, we do.
We got Michael Lyons from As You See It, Now You See It, private investigation firm. Mike has an extensive law enforcement career as a New York detective. So this guy should be able to really get our listeners.
Narcotics, yeah. And he's going to tell you about the one case that he did, the big bust.
Okay. And also we're going to talk about audio and video. This guy does it all, right?
He does everything.
Wow. Okay. All right. I think he's going to show me up here. Mike, are you with us today?
I'm with you, and I'll never show you up, I promise.
Okay, we're off to a good start, Mike.
Never bite the hand that feeds you.
Mike, look, for my listeners, okay, we're here live on Voice America, and listeners are tuning in. If you would, share with the listeners a little bit about yourself. I know we've had dealings with you in the past, very professional. Debbie can talk to you all day.
Yeah.
You two talk about war stories and stuff. But for our listeners, this is the first time, why don't you tell them a little bit about your experience, your history, and what you've done in your past careers.
Hello?
Yeah, can you hear us now?
I think I'm actually losing the connection a little bit.
Okay.
Correction, I wasn't a New York City detective. I was a Yonkers, New York detective, which is the bordering city to New York, for the listeners who don't know the geography of the New York area. It's the fourth largest city in the state, and we border the Bronx. I spent 25 years there, and 17 of those years were in narcotics, not straight through 17 years. The first 3 years I spent undercover, and actually never saw the inside of a police station for the first 3 years, which was good, but I was always depending on somebody to deliver my paycheck to me. Anyway, it was an interesting career, and I did some time in patrol. I did some time in what we could call general assignment, which dealt with everything from homicides, assaults, robberies, burglaries, that sort of thing. And then, of course, I went back to narcotics. And when I was in narcotics, I ended up being their tech guy. I would wire up the informants or the undercover cops that were going out in the field so we could listen to them. And the reason I became so proficient at it, and I think I told this story to Debbie already, that they thought I was great in there, that I knew all this stuff, and I was the only one who read the instructions that came with the equipment. And that's kind of what led me to the final career that I have. What happened was the lieutenant who was in narcotics then eventually got promoted up to deputy chief, and they wanted to start a technical unit like New York City has TARU, which is a technical assistance response unit. And so Yonkers was going to build a unit like that. So they came to me and asked me to put it together and run the place. So I did that. I went around. I kind of had free reign and got some free trips to some interesting places on the city of Yonkers to check out equipment. And when I finally got the right equipment together, I was the head of that unit. And I was also the foot of that unit because I was the only one in it. And with that, I kind of got a couple extra guys in there working with me, and we developed the forensic video unit and audio. And I saw that there was a possibility to use that on the outside after I retired. So after 25 years on the department, I retired and opened up my own place the very next day after my retirement.
All right, so you did 25 years, okay, and got an education.
John, you still there?
Yep, can you hear us?
Yeah, it just broke up a little.
Okay. All right, and just so you know, if you get disconnected, Mike, just call back, okay?
Okay.
But anyway, so you did 25 years in law enforcement, and then you took that experience and turned it into a private business.
Yes. And what I did was I was open to other small police agencies who didn't have access to the equipment. A lot of times the departments would get a case and they would go to the FBI with their video. And the thing about that was everybody in the country was going to the FBI. And they were so backlogged that the smaller departments kind of got put on the wayside, the back burner. So I was using the same equipment as the FBI uses, and still am to this day, and the same equipment as the NYPD and the New York City DA's office and other police departments large enough to buy this stuff. And, of course, training comes with it. There's a lot of training. And so the smaller departments would come to me, and also the district attorney's office in Westchester used me quite a bit because they didn't have any of the stuff available to them. Defense attorneys started using me, too, to look over the evidence that they had before going to trial. So I kind of became a specialist in forensic video enhancement and audio, because the audio kind of goes hand in hand with the video, although it's two different, completely separate entities as far as processing goes. Because there are times that if I have a video with audio on it, I'll actually pull those two sections apart. I'll take the audio off, just work on the audio, and then put it back on the video. The term enhancement was used for the longest time, and they kind of changed it they kind of got away from enhancement because the courts were afraid that enhancement kind of sounded like you were doing something extra to the video, and you want to make it so you're not altering the evidence, you're just making it more readily viewable or more seeable, let's put it, or audible. So with that is basically the foundation of Now You See It Investigative Services, and I named it that. Now You See It because it started with the video and made the evidence so you could see it better. And investigative services, we cover a lot of stuff. We can do computer forensics, polygraph. A lot of times I go to a guy that you know, John, Mike Mancuso, and we work together.
Yeah, Mike.
Fingerprinting, just about any service you come up with, we try to have. And defense attorneys and private investigators are a bulk of the business because when the district attorneys have a case, they have the police departments to do their investigating for them, or their own investigators. When a defense attorney gets a case, and then he or she needs somebody to look over the evidence too. So basically is what they're doing is they're hiring me to just review the evidence for them before they go into trial.
Yeah, Mike, let me interrupt. That's got to be almost like the opposite side. I mean, 25 years, law enforcement, you were doing the IT stuff, the electronics to apprehend and capture. Now, in the private sector, almost like a transition to the private sector, you're working for the defense, and I guess you're challenging procedures, techniques, see if the audio and video was altered or enhanced, right?
Yeah, that's kind of a way of putting it. Yes. You see, now I was the first cop in the family, and since then I have two sons and a daughter-in-law who are on the police department. They all started in NYPD, and they kind of say to me, "Dad, you went to the dark side," but it isn't really the dark side. It's because the evidence the video evidence and the audio evidence is what it is. whether it's for the prosecution or the defense. Now, to the best of my recollection, the Constitution says everybody's entitled to a defense, so the defense attorneys have to have the opportunity to see the evidence also. So there are plenty of times that I review their evidence and say, here it is, and they look at me and say, this isn't what I wanted to hear. And I said, well, it doesn't matter what you wanted to hear. This is what the truth of the matter is.
Right.
And that's kind of, it's not the dark side, it's kind of the gray side, I guess. But I do a lot of work for police departments, too. Still do some for the Yonkers Police Department. Comes to me every now and then with a video that, which makes me feel a little bit better when they tell me, we had problems working on this one, can you fix it, or can you look at it for us? And that makes me feel a little better, like I was difficult to replace, although everybody is replaceable. But, I come home with my head a little bit bigger, and it doesn't happen so often that I had to widen my doors so I could get my head in the house. But, it does happen. And like I said, the smaller police departments, they come to me a lot, too.
All right, Mike.
Kind of since I've retired, I have seen both sides of the line, and it's very interesting and sometimes very scary when you look at both sides and you say, geez, I thought good guys were always right. And now I'm getting to the point where I say, sometimes the other side is right, too.
Well, we're going to talk about that. We're going to go to station break. Mike, I'm going to ask you to stay with us through the station break, and then we're going to come back. So, listeners, stay tuned. Michael Lyons has got a lot more to share with you, so it's going to be real interesting, Deb, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, so listen, listeners, we'll be back right after station break, so stay with us.
Accredited Investigations Incorporated offers a wide array of investigative services to law firms, insurance companies, individuals, private organizations, and corporations. Our goal is to reach the case objectives and resolve the client's issues as quickly and cost-effectively as possible. Local investigative services include identity, wrongful death, drug, alcohol, and abuse, and divorce, support, custody, and family investigations. For more information, call or click today. Accredited Investigations, when you need to know.
Accredited Investigations Incorporated. Professional, licensed private detectives with over 28 years of experience, providing comprehensive nationwide services. Our extensive and diverse team offers discreet and confidential consultations. Our state-of-the-art technology and investigative resources allow us to stay in front of other investigative companies. We welcome the opportunity to earn your trust and deliver you the best service in the industry. Call Accredited Investigations Incorporated at 866-821-5258.
You're listening to the Private Eye Nightline with host John Ciaccio. To ask a question or express a concern about today's program, please call toll-free 1-866-472-5788, 1-866-472-5788. You may also send an email to info@pinightline.com. Now, back to the show.
Thank you, listeners, for sticking with us through the station break. My name, again, is John Ciaccio. I am your host tonight for the Private Eye Nightline. I have Debbie O'Hara from Accredited Investigations in the studio. I want to thank her again for being with us tonight. Thanks, Deb. Mm-hmm. And we have Michael Lyons from Now You See It, Investigative Services, Inc. And Mike's been sharing with us about his career with New York and law enforcement. Now he's going to talk to us a little bit about the private side. Mike, you still with us, right?
Yes, sir, I am.
Okay, let me ask a couple questions here, Mike.
Okay.
All right. Going from the law enforcement side, and I understand even as in your private practice now, as running your own investigative company, you have the police department still reaching out to you for your expertise and so forth. And I understand that defense attorneys want you to take a look to see if there's any anything they can obtain to determine if the video audio devices were used, if they were gathered and how successful they were, or if they were flawed in any way. But let's talk about what you do for a lot of work for private investigators, because that's a lot of times those private investigators reaching out to you are representing clients, what I call private clients out there. So let's talk a little bit about that, and maybe listeners can appreciate what you've been able to do for private investigators and on behalf of their clients.
Okay. I get a lot of work from private investigators, and I also have a private investigator's license myself. I have that because I really don't need it just to do the video or audio forensics. But if I have to go out and gather the evidence, then I need to have that license. So that's why I maintain a private investigator's license myself. A lot of private investigators that send me work, they'll have video that they've taken on everything from standard VHS tapes all the way to digital stuff. They'll have it in a format that they can't use it to give to their client. So what they'll do is they'll send it to me, and I'll enhance it, as I said before, or as clarify is the better term to use. I'll do some clarification on it, and then I'll put it in a format where they can give it to their client or the attorney they're working for and say, here's the video or audio evidence. A lot of times the audio stuff is just trying to get rid of background noise, things like that. So that's what I do for the private investigators. And we cover a lot of different mediums. Like I said, I got everything from VHS tapes all the way down to digital stuff. And the VHS tapes, believe it or not, are easier to clean up than the digital. But we can usually make it a little clearer. Unfortunately, a lot of people, private investigators, regular civilians, as you may call them, they watch way too much television, and they think that you can zoom in on a corner of a picture and get the registration sticker off of a car. It really can't be done. That works great in the movies. It doesn't work in real life. I get a lot of stuff. I've gotten stuff from as far away as, I got stuff from an investigator in Houston, Texas, California. They send me stuff from all over. And I guess the name now you see, Investigative Services, is starting to get around. There aren't that many of us forensic video people around, civilian-wise. So I kind of have become known in that respect. We've also gotten into what I'll get requested a lot of from just about everybody is my client has messages on his cell phone that I have to get off. So they'll come to me and they'll tell me this, and I'll say, well, I used to have to make a connection to my computer with their cell phone and then download their messages, clean them up, and of course, in cases like that, they don't want the messages where the spouse is calling up and leaving a message to bring home 2 quarts of milk. So you have to, they pick and choose which messages they need for their case. Well, it used to be I'd have to hook up the cell phone itself, so I'd have to actually ask them to either bring the cell phone in or mail me the cell phone, and I'd hook it up to my computers and do what I have to do. I have a new service now where all I have to do is just get the number of the cell phone and get from the person who owns the cell phone the password, and I just tell them, don't answer your phone when it rings, and I'll take over from here for the next 5 minutes or so, and I'll call that cell phone, and I can get it right off of the phone that way, right into my computer. I don't have to have the phone. The upside to that is every year there seems to be a new style or model cell phone out, and every time they change that, they change the connection. So I have to have a 100 connections, different connections for every different phone. This way, I don't have to.
All right, so let me interrupt here. So if I'm listening carefully, this is scary stuff, Deb. If I'm listening to Mike carefully, so you're telling me if a client calls you and says, here's the cell number and here's the password for that cell, you don't even need to touch that cell phone. You can extract the messages and so forth just by calling that cell phone up.
Correct, but I can't do a cell phone. Let's say you called me up and said, here's the cell phone and here's the password, I need the messages, and it's not your cell phone.
Right.
That just doesn't work. First of all, it's illegal. Second of all, the system is set up that unless it's your phone, it isn't going to work because the phone is going to ring.
Right.
So if you're trying to do somebody else's phone, the next thing they know, they're getting a phone call, and they're going to know what's going on. So it's set up kind of like a fail-safe so that you really can't overstep your boundaries on that.
Yeah, I mean, like for instance, if a parent owns rights to a cell phone that a child uses, then they have the control mechanisms in place, the password and so forth, and you can extract the messages, correct?
Yes, they still have to have the actual instrument in their possession, though.
Right. Okay.
Mike, can you also retrieve any photos, anything that's on these phones?
Most of the time, yes.
With just a phone call?
Oh, no, not with just a phone call. That you need the actual cell phone itself.
So just a phone
like
call.
That. This is just, it would be, this is also used, it could be used to record a phone conversation. Let's say, John, that you have a client that you wanted to make a controlled call on to anybody who's ever done any of this in law enforcement or in the private sector. Be clarified what a controlled call is. A controlled call is when you're making a phone call and you're recording it and you're in control of that phone call. So that, let's say, I think the best example would be the way law enforcement does it, and then the private investigators that are listening can adapt accordingly. Let's say I'm an investigator and I have a client that had difficulty with a neighbor. And you would say to your client, look, call up your neighbor and we'll put a recorder on your phone and we'll record the conversation with your neighbor and try to get them to admit what they did. And that's all perfectly legal. And you would hook the phone up to a recorder. And like I was saying, that with all the different connections, you're going to have a connection for whatever phone they have and a recorder to hook up to it. And then you have to get the evidence together from that recorder after it's done. So to do that, you have to always be in control. But a lot of times people lose control. They don't hook up the recorder right, or they haven't tested the procedure first before they go ahead and make the call, and it just didn't work. This, and you never get a second chance at this. Like if I was calling up somebody and I said, why did you throw the garbage over my fence? And my neighbor said, well, I didn't mean to. And then we find out that we didn't get that on tape. And I try to call him again and ask him the same question. He's not going to say anything. Yeah. So you only get one shot at this. So you want to make sure everything is correct. You want to make sure everything's in line and ready to go.
It's a form of evidence. If you can get clear evidence, especially in the conflict, and the other party side is admitting it, and you have it on recording, it speaks volumes as far as support to whether it be a civil wrongdoing or a criminal wrongdoing. But let's go back to the legalities, the legal issues. So you're telling me, say like Pennsylvania, it's a constitutional state. It does not allow any recordings whatsoever, whether you're aware of it or you do a covert, you're not aware of it. But in Jersey, You can do a covert recording as long as you're a party to it. Tell the listeners how that service you provide now will help with those legalities.
Okay. There are two-party states and one-party states. One-party meaning that one party has to be aware that the call is being recorded. Two-party states, both parties have to be aware. Now, oddly enough, I started doing some research on this when I started getting into the telephone recording service. Oddly enough, federal law says all states are one-party states. It's just the state laws that override that, and they make their own. There are, I believe it's 38 one-party states out of the 50 states. So there are more states that allow one-party than there are two-party states. Now, the other issue that I had when I first started working on this is today, with everybody having cell phones, not too many, the landlines aren't there. You can have your cell phone. I have a 914 area code, but I could be standing in Alaska, and I'm still carrying that 914. So if you're calling me, you have no idea that I'm in Alaska or Pennsylvania in your reference. You would have no idea that you'd say, this guy's in New York.
Yeah, no, I see that a lot in my business here, Michael. Let me interrupt you, Mike, because we got to go to station break again. We're going to pick up right where we left off. So it's amazing how he knows 38 states are one party. It's amazing. This guy knows a lot. So, listeners, stay with us.
It might be 39. I have to check.
Too much time on your hands, Mike.
All right. Michael, stay with us. Debbie, stay with us. Listeners, please stay with us. We're going to pick up right after station break. Thank you.
Accredited Investigations Incorporated offers a wide array of investigative services to law firms, insurance companies, individuals, private organizations, and corporations. Our goal is to reach the case objectives and resolve the client's issues as quickly and cost-effectively as possible. Local investigative services include identity, wrongful death, drug, alcohol, and abuse, and divorce, support, custody, and family investigations. For more information, call or click today. Accredited Investigations, when you need to know.
Accredited Investigations Incorporated. Professional, licensed private detectives with over 28 years of experience, providing comprehensive nationwide services. Our extensive and diverse team offers discreet and confidential consultations. Our state-of-the-art technology and investigative resources allow us to stay in front of other investigative companies. We welcome the opportunity to earn your trust and deliver you the best service in the industry. Call Accredited Investigations Incorporated at 866-821-5258.
You're listening to the Private Eye Nightline with host John Ciaccio. To ask a question or express a concern about today's program, please call toll-free 1-866-472-5788, 1-866-472-5788. You may also send an email to info@pinightline.com. Now, back to the show.
Okay, thank you, listeners, for sticking with us through station break. Again, my name is John Ciaccio. I am your host for the Private Eye Nightline. We have Debbie O'Hara in the studio from Accredited Investigations. Thank you, Debbie. What do you think about being on Wednesday nights now versus Friday mornings?
I think it's better.
Yeah, so do I.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to help our listeners, too. Because on the West Coast, being out there,
Too early in the morning.
Oh, it's unbelievable. Okay, listeners, you've been great to stick with us. We got Michael Lyons from Now You See It Investigative Services, Inc. Mike, you with us?
Yes, sir.
All right, Mike, do me a favor. Before we go back to that, the topics we were discussing, if you would share with the listeners, if they wanted to reach out to you, whether the listener be a private investigator or a private citizen, how would they be able to reach you? Tell them a little bit about your name, your company, your website, your phone number, so they can reach out to you directly, okay?
Okay, I'll do that. The name of the company, as has been repeated a couple of times, is Now You See It Investigative Services Incorporated. I am located in the city of Yonkers, New York, at 1462 Nepperhan Avenue, and my phone number is 914-964-1184. The website is nowyousseeitinc.com, and as a matter of fact, you can get some information about phone recordings on that website, along with other things. And the website's always a work in progress, so sometimes listeners will have to bear with me every now and then. And let's see, what else? I started the company. I retired from the police department May 10th, 2002, and the company opened its doors May 11th, 2002. And that was it. I never took a day off from work.
So you got a little over 10 years now in the private sector, huh?
Yes, yeah. And 25 in the police department, and before that I did 1 year in New York State Corrections, the longest year of my life. But,
that's a jungle.
Don't envy those guys. Those guys work hard.
Yeah, they do.
So all in all, from 1976 to the present, I've been in law enforcement somewhere along the line. So,
well, for the listeners, I want to share with them, you first came to us, you were introduced to us by a gentleman by the name of Michael Mancuso. And Michael Mancuso, owner of Searching for the Truth, was on our show, about four or 5 weeks ago about computer forensics. Michael Mancuso is a godsend. He's a guy who's nothing but professional, knows a lot, and he's good people. So I know we reached out to you, I think a little over a year or a couple of years ago, about we had an audio or videotape that we needed you to look at, and Mike Mancuso said, you got to talk to this guy, Mike Lyons. He knows his stuff. He knows what he's doing, and you're going to love him. And I'll tell you, since then it's been great, and I know Debbie has high respect for you. We were really pleased with your results. So listeners, listen to me. If there's an audio or a video, or if you're a private investigator and you need the service, definitely reach out to Mike Lyons, because he definitely knows what he's doing, and that's for sure. All right, Michael.
Thanks, John.
You're welcome. Let's get back to some of this interesting stuff. So back to the two-party versus one-party. 38, 39 states, one party. But for listeners and for private investigators, because, Mike, I got to be honest with you, I think a lot of private investigators don't even know this stuff you're talking about, and this is good that you're sharing it with them. How do you record a conversation in a state that's a two-party?
Well, here's the thing. When I started working in this area, I started doing a little research because I had the same question. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to cross any legal boundaries. I kind of like my bedroom the size it is. I don't need one that's 6 foot by 8 foot and has bars on the front.
You and me both.
So I started looking into this, and like I said, wasn't that long ago that I found out that according to federal law, all states are one party. Which was a real find. That's great. So then you just worry about the state laws. And so then I started pondering the fact that since everybody's using cell phones, I could be calling from anywhere, and you would think you're calling New York when you're actually calling somebody who's standing in California. I realized that when my son, who lives in Connecticut, has an Ohio area code, because he moved out here from there and just kept his phone number. And in the advent of computerized telephones such as Magic Jack and a couple of those Phonics or whatever it is, you can request for any area code you want, and not only that, you could change your area code every month if you feel like it for a nominal fee of like $10. I could change my area code and phone number. So I'm saying to myself, how does this work? Well, it ends up that that's how I found out there's like 38 one-party states. So I realized that I better start to talk to somebody. I've never heard it challenged before in court. So I talked to a couple of attorneys that I know, and the answer that I got really kind of amazed me. It was, as long as, like, let's say I'm calling you now and I'm recording this and you're in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And you have a Pennsylvania area code. I can record it as long as it's going to be used in a New York court, even though it's in, I'm calling a two-party state. Because usually if a one-party state calls a two-party state, the more restricted state is dominant. So it would be, if I was calling a two-party state, the two-party state would be the dominant one. I'd have to notify both people.
Okay.
Okay, but if it's going to be prosecuted in New York or whatever, in New York court, and I'm calling from New York, that's fair game.
So basically, it's where the evidence is going to be introduced to.
Correct.
And out.
Yeah.
All right.
That's correct. So that kind of alleviates some of the problem right there. The other thing that you have to realize is, if I'm recording this phone call and I'm in a one-party state and I'm calling you in a one-party state and we're having this conversation, and somebody else walks into the room who doesn't know that I'm recording the phone call, and I hand off the phone to that other person and I leave the room, I'm not any longer a part of that conversation. Now I'm violating stuff because one party doesn't know at all.
Right.
So just the fact that I'm calling from a one-party state and I hooked up the recorder doesn't mean anything. I have to be part of that conversation, even if I'm just listening.
And you would think that, today's day and age with the technology, but the laws out there, you would think that most people know that. But, Michael, I got to tell you, there isn't a week doesn't go by I get a call from a potential customer saying, I need to tap my husband's phone or my wife's phone and so forth. And I can't believe even today they don't understand that is an illegal process. It escapes me how some people just think that they can do those kind of things.
Well, I had a woman come to me just 2 days ago, and she had these digital recorders, and she said, can you put these I don't know anything about this equipment, can you take this audio off of here, she didn't say audio, just the recordings, and put it on a disc that I can listen to it? And I said, yeah, I can do that, and I have no problem doing that at all. I'm not violating any laws at all. I haven't planted the recorder. I don't know the conversation. I'm just taking it, dumping it into the computer, changing the format of it, in this case to an MP3, putting it on a disc, and she could play it in her car on the way home. So there's no problem there, But when she said, I put these recorders in my husband's car so I could get his conversation, I handed her the discs. I said, you better think twice or talk to your attorney about whether you even use this stuff. Yeah. And I said, you might end up in more trouble than it's worth.
Yeah.
So that's it. I mean, if you have a listener out there that says, I have recorders, I need this stuff off, and I, call Mike Lyons, and now you see it, and send it to him, and he'll get it off. And he'll put it in the format that I can play it. That's all well and good. There's no problem doing that. I'll do it, and I'll send it back, and they can do what they want with it. They just better be aware that if it turns up in court, they could end up, in more trouble than it's worth.
Yeah, and I see,
just a lot of explaining to do.
With the electronic stores out there, I'm dating myself here, doing this for the last 29, 30 years, but like with Radio Shack, people will walk in there, they'll buy the adapters to do phone recordings, they'll buy the digital recorders. Some now can last a long time, and like you said, they'll stick it in their spouse's vehicle, because we know if spouses are having infidelity, first thing they do when they leave the home is get on the phone, and the last person they talk to is the other person before they come home. So that's where people are trying to listen in with those hidden recorders.
But, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong. Say it is the spouse's vehicle, But the female that came to your office is the registered owner of that vehicle. Legally, she has a right to be able to do that?
Well, I'll tell you what, let's hold off on answering that question because we're going to go to station break again. And when we come back, Mike, get ready, if you can, to be in a hot seat and answer Debbie's question, okay?
Oh, yeah, I'm all ready for that now.
Okay.
You can always put me in a hot seat.
Hang tight, Mike, and we'll talk to you soon. Listeners, don't go anywhere. We're going to have Mike answer Debbie's question when we get back. All righty. Thank you.
Accredited Investigations Incorporated offers a wide array of investigative services to law firms, insurance companies, individuals, private organizations, and corporations. Our goal is to reach the case objectives and resolve the client's issues as quickly and cost-effectively as possible. Local investigative services include identity, wrongful death, drug, alcohol, and abuse, and divorce, support, custody, and family investigations. For more information, call or click today. Accredited Investigations, when you need to know.
Accredited Investigations Incorporated. Professional, licensed private detectives with over 28 years of experience, providing comprehensive nationwide services. Our extensive and diverse team offers discreet and confidential consultations. Our state-of-the-art technology and investigative resources allow us to stay in front of other investigative companies. We welcome the opportunity to earn your trust and deliver you the best service in the industry. Call Accredited Investigations Incorporated at 866-821-5258.
You're listening to the Private Eye Nightline with host John Ciaccio. To ask a question or express a concern about today's program, please call toll-free 1-866-472-5788, 1-866-472-5788. You may also send an email to info@pinightline.com. Now, back to the show.
Thank you, listeners, for staying with us through station break. Again, my name is John Ciaccio. I am your host tonight for the Private Eye Nightline. Debbie O'Hara is in the studio from Accredited Investigations, Inc. Thank you, Debbie, for being with us. And we have Michael Lyons from Now You See It Investigations, Inc. And right before break, Debbie was putting Mike in the hot seat with a question. So I'm just going to sit back here and enjoy this. All right, Deb, ask him, Michael again.
All right, Mike, you were saying that a woman came to you a couple days ago with some audio recordings, little handheld recorders that she placed in her husband's vehicle. Now, is she legally allowed to do that if she is the registered owner of that vehicle, even though that's her husband's car? He drives it to and from work.
Simple enough answer, no. The thing is, audio and video are two different worlds. Video, she could put in there.
Really?
Audio, she can't.
Why?
You can videotape just about anybody anywhere, aside from, if you're putting in nanny cams, you can't put them in the nanny's bedroom or the bathroom or something like that. Those are the obvious, but
right.
Despite it being obvious, there are people who do it anyway, I'm sure. But audio, you have to be a party to somewhere. So the answer to that is no, she can't. There was an issue with trackers where, and I stay away from them now. I used to rent them out and things like that, but too many issues came up with them, and I just as soon stay away from them. With trackers, you'd ask the people, who owns the car?
Right.
And they would say, well, the car is registered to my husband, but I use it all the time. And that's all well and good. That's fair game. As long as you have access to that car legitimately, the spouse knows it. Like all my cars here are registered to me, but one car is basically my wife's car. But legally, it's mine.
Right.
And my car is legally hers too, because everything is joint here. And she has keys to my car, and I have keys to her car. You can take any car you want. So that's fair game. But that would be with video. You could put video in there, but you just can't do audio with that. So the answer to that is no. Just because she owns the car, it wouldn't make it right. It wouldn't make it legal.
I knew that answer, but Mike, let me ask you this: with private investigators, how many you think a lot of are in our private investigative industry? Do you think a lot of private investigators know that answer?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I think anybody worked their assault definitely knows that answer and wouldn't cross that line.
Yeah, I found that anybody who thinks first, does some research, can easily get that answer. In fact, correct me if I'm wrong, the audio issue is covered pretty much because of the privacy, invasion of privacy statutes. But when they were written, even the Constitution all the way back, they had no idea that video would play the role that it plays. So, like Michael was saying, in the bedroom or in the bathroom, that's under the invasion of privacy. But other than that, it's fair game on video, right, Mike?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. All right, I'll tell you what. Let me ask you about a video question here. Say you're a private citizen or you're a private eye, and you video someone, whether it be an infidelity or a insurance fraud, a workers' comp fraud, something like that, and you video somebody through the front door, the door's wide open, and you video them through the door, then walking up to that door is fair game. I'm under the impression, though, if an investigator or a private citizen uses a zoom lens to look in past that door, even though the door's open, the whole tape is tainted and it cannot be used. Am I right or am I wrong?
I'm not 100% sure the answer to that, because what you have there, to what I believe and to what I've heard, is there's an expectation of privacy. If you live on the second story, I don't expect anybody to be looking in my window because nobody's that tall. If you're using a ladder, now you're violating my expectation of privacy. In the same respect, the front door, if I'm on the street and you open the front door and I can see into the house just what I can see with the door open, once you open that door, you don't have an expectation of privacy from what can be seen. That's my understanding of it. I don't know how accurate that is.
And you know what? Your answer's right on target. Where it differs is just like you said. If you use a ladder, but if you use a zoom lens, if the right of privacy is what a normal eye will see, and there's case law at that. That's been documented. If an individual, investigator or not, uses a zoom lens, telephoto lens, past of what a natural eye, it's just like your answer, Michael. If you use a step ladder or any other instrument to impede or to break that invasion of privacy issue, and that's what it comes down to, is that you used an instrument to break what a normal eye would view.
Right, but I don't know how accurate that is because I can use binoculars.
Yeah, but binoculars...
I've been in court before and testified that I've used binoculars, and there has never been an issue aside from more power over the binoculars. That was the only question I was ever asked with that.
Right, and...
the zoom lens is nothing more than a pair of binoculars. You just, enlarging the photo.
You would think, but then again, outside is fine. It's fair game. It's through a window, upstairs window, through an open door. I've seen cases get tested, believe it or not. Are you ready for this? One case, even when the garage door was open. And I think our society is, and as we see firsthand with the audio, there's a bunch of states that require two-party consent, and there's more states that require one-party consent. So I guess that's the same thing follows with the video, I guess, as well.
Yeah, probably.
All right, Michael, again, if you would you tell the audience, I want to make sure that they, our audience, whether it be private citizens, but private investigators as well, I think you offer a very valued service. If you would, just give them your full name and your phone number again.
Okay, it's Michael Lyons, and the name of the company is Now You See It Investigative Services Incorporated. The phone number is 914-964-1184. The website is Now You See It Inc. That's all one word spelled out at nowyousseeitinc.com. And the services we offer mainly, largely forensic video clarification, audio clarification. What was I going to say? The services we can be basically from any venue. I don't do beta tapes, by the way. I tried, but nobody had them. And,
I was going to ask you, do you still get VHS? That's when you said that earlier, that surprised me.
I get a lot of VHS. And one quick thing I want to just touch on, and any of the listeners can always email me and ask me. The collection of video evidence sometimes is difficult because every system now coming out, the digital stuff, is proprietary. And getting it off the recorder to something that you can see use in your case, or give it to your attorney, or use yourself, or just whatever, it can be a difficult process. Each thing is a little different. So a lot of times these departments and agencies like the Bronx Defenders call me up a lot to get their evidence for them. They know where it is. They've seen it on the monitor. They just can't get it. And private investigators have too. I've done a couple recently. And I said, I see it. I know it's there. How do I get it? So they'll make an appointment with me to whoever owns the machine, to the recorder, and I'll go and download the evidence and then put it into a system that they can see. So evidence collection is a whole other subject that you could probably fill another hour or half hour with.
Yeah,
sometimes you got to be careful because sometimes you can lose evidence or kind of chop it up in the process and.
Yeah, Mike, I think that's for a whole nother show. I'll tell you that. I think we can have you on a couple more shows, actually. All right, they're telling me we got to wrap it up now. So, Michael Lyons from Now You See It Investigative Services, Inc. was our guest expert tonight. Michael, thank you very much for being on the air with us tonight.
And if any of the listeners have any questions, they can get onto my website and send me an email or whatever, and I'll try to do my best to answer them.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mike. Thank you, Debbie.
Thanks, John. Thanks so much, Mike.
And listeners.
Always a pleasure.
Thank
John,
you.
It's always a pleasure talking to you. And I'm going to thank Michael Mancuso for introducing me to you in the first place. The guy's great.
Yes, and I thank you, Mike. I really appreciate it. We will talk soon. We'll have you on the show again. Listeners, thanks. We'll see you next Wednesday night, 5 o'clock Pacific time, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Thank you. Be safe. Talk to you then. Bye.
Thanks again for joining us this week. The Private Eye Nightline will be back next Friday morning at 7 a.m. Pacific Time, 10 a.m. Eastern Time on the Voice America Variety Channel. John Ciaccio hopes to have you tune in again next week.